Every single year, there are more and more knife brands. This industry is completely different from when I first started this channel just 5 years ago. It's a totally different landscape. There are a ton of knife brands, and it can be really difficult to know which brand to buy from for your next knife. And I've found 5 knife brands that if you don't already know about them, then you're doing it wrong. You should know about these guys. So here are 5 knife brands you should know, and let's do the damn thing. So the very first one is probably the newest to me, and I actually found them, I'd seen them on Instagram, but I'd never really paid too much attention, just my own fault. But when Ricky started working for me, one of the first knives he pulled out was a Voodoo from Null Knives. I should have paid attention sooner. He's doing some really cool stuff. His name is Sean, and he's got some really sick designs. So we're gonna show you 3 of those right now. So the very first knife from Null is this one right here. This is the Raiden, and it's a drop point with a big swedge. They all have this harpoon swedge to them, which is kind of a distinctive feature. This is the next knife, the Voodoo, the one I was talking about that Ricky showed me. This is the Raikou. This one will go up for pre-order. This one I think is my favorite, mainly because of how smooth it is. You know, you can normally feel like the friction. You can't feel it. It just feels like it's on glass. It feels so good. You do have a pocket so you can spidey flick this one. It also has studs on both sides. And what I do really like about this is the studs. You have these triangular studs that are stepped, very much like that Arcform Theory I got at Blade Show. These studs are awesome. And the knife itself is extremely comfortable in the hand. And I've always been a huge fan of harpoons. One of my favorite knives of all time has a giant harpoon swedge, being the Umnumzan. I just like this. It's a very comfy knife, very slicey. It's got that hollow grind. I like this one a lot. I would say that the Raiden, like if I were to buy one, I would probably get the Raiden just because more of a drop point style, very clean, just simple. I'm a more simple aesthetic kind of person. But for me, it's just a toss up between these two. And then the Raikou. Thing that's most interesting to me is that between the Raiden and the Raikou, they're basically the same handle. I don't really see any differences when you look at them. They're the same shape, same size, same everything. The clips are a little bit different, and that's really the only thing I notice other than the show side pivot having a Torx here and not on the Raiden. But the other thing to point out about Null is that there are just tiny little details that just set it off. Like this Voodoo has this design milled into this back spacer here. It's just a cool little design. And this one has this kind of, it almost looks like frag, but it's just little rectangles on the back spacer. The pricing on these is pretty on par with what you get from other brands, and I really like it. It's a very clean, modern design, and that is Null Knives. You may have heard me talk about this next maker in a recent video I did. Somebody asked me, it was a Q&A, somebody asked what my favorite knife designer is. I said David Lespect is one of them, but the other would have to be Evan Nicolaitis, and that is Esnyx Knives. If you're not familiar, this is Esnyx Knives, and he's doing some really cool stuff. So these just appear to be pretty basic slip joints and front clippers on the outside. But he's got this cool little ode to the old case sod buster in what he calls the beer buster. It's the same pattern, but you have a bottle opener right there at the end of the handle, and there's a slip joint version as well as a front flipper liner lock. Feels really good, great action, easy to flip, good size. But we also have the Barracuda. So this is his more like classy carry, like pocket steak knife, effectively, letter opener. He said it's like a desk knife or something that he carries on a night out. If he's going to a nice steakhouse or doing something a little more fancy, he carries a knife like the Barracuda. And then he has these as more of a, a work knife. But then this is the newest knife from Esnyx, and this is the Workhorse. Same deal, it's a front flipper, just like your Beer Buster Jr., but it's bigger. A good size. Like, I really like this. This might be one of my favorite, like, pocket clip, modern traditional front flippers. This might be it. It's so good. It's kind of a toss-up between 3 different knives. They're all a little bit different from one another, but this one is just tuned perfectly. Action is so good, and that flipper tab is just barely sticking out up there. So this one is actually a blue micarta, believe it or not. It's not denim, I think it's canvas. You have a little Timascus inlay there for the shield, and then a standard pocket clip, which he has updated. It's very different from the other one. It kind of flares out versus a taper. Yeah, he's got a lot of different configurations in these. There's a green micarta, natural micarta, full titanium. There's a blackout version. He's got a lot of really cool stuff going, and this is all part of his silver line, which means that all of these are production models. But we haven't talked about what really, really, truly sets Evan apart. Evan is a perfectionist. He is not only a perfectionist, he's a perfectionist's perfectionist. Meaning that, like, where most people would call it good, Evan is still like excruciatingly just combing over the fine details. And we can show you real quick what this knife is. This is the Workhorse in CPM 20CV with Westinghouse rag micarta, and there's Evan's signature. That is your COA, and this thing is a work of art. It is a beautiful knife, like just absolutely beautiful. The lines on this, the edges, just all of the work on this from Evan is outstanding. And this thing is easily one of the nicest, if not the nicest, custom slip joint I've ever handled. This is the Westinghouse rag micarta, and then you have like a yellow G10 as the liner. Nice shield there. I love that rag micarta. It looks so good and so unique. If you really appreciate craftsmanship, you're going to appreciate what Evan does. That right there is a beautiful, beautiful custom slip joint. And this right here, I'm excited for these to come out. The Workhorse, so 2 different versions of the Workhorse. And then we do have the others that we also talked about, but that is Esnyx. So let's keep the slip joint love alive with what I think is probably one of the hottest slip joint makers right now, especially in my community, and that is Jack Wolf Knives. This is probably my favorite model of his right now, and this is the Big Bro Jack. I just love a good clip point slip joint. Like, they're just, that's my speed. And then you guys may remember from Blade Show, I actually picked up a Jack Wolf knife. This is the Gunslinger Jack. I don't remember this colorway, but it's definitely the best colorway of the ones he'd launched at Blade Show, or had at Blade Show. This is the one that has the like gold or bronze accents, and I don't remember this.
It's like gold dust carbon fiber, I think.
Yeah, it's a really sick looking carbon fiber, and you're never gonna really hear me say that I don't like carbon fiber. That's a cool looking carbon fiber. What is it that Jack Wolf is doing that sets him apart? I think it just feels, to me personally, like this right here feels like a true work knife in terms of slip joints. A lot of slip joints have really weak action. I don't really like that. I can't really get behind that. This thing is one of the hardest pulls on a slip joint I've ever felt. Love it or hate it, that's definitely the way these are all tuned. I personally prefer it. I like a heavy pull. But this definitely makes you feel, I would say, a little more secure in using the knife, right? If you're using a slip joint right, it's never really gonna close on you. These are, I would say, the toughest feeling, most hard use slip joints, production slip joints that you're gonna find right now, in my opinion. The other part is the experience. I'm not saying that you should buy a knife based on its packaging, but Ben at Jack Wolf definitely makes this an experience. So we have a feel-good jack and a laid-back jack. Titanium jigged and fat carbon lava flow. So every single Jack Wolf knife comes in a tube like this right here, and we have 2 different ones. Each knife model has its own artwork as well. And once you open this up, you have a pog on top, just like the ones that you played with as a kid, or at least I did. Every one comes with a microfiber cloth that the knife is wrapped in. You have a sticker and a leather slip inside. The sticker matches that art. It's all custom artwork for each model, and then the leather slip. So this one is the Feel Good Jack in lava fat carbon, and then this one is the Laid Back Jack, which is a sway back pattern in jigged titanium. So these are the 4 models from Jack Wolf that we've got. I've not handled these 2. I didn't have to, because I know that I handled some of them at Blade Show, and I just kind of know what they all feel like. They're all in S90V. You kind of know what to expect once you've handled one of these, right? They all have that really, really snappy action. There's just something about these knives from Jack Wolf that feel like a really fresh take on something that's been done a million times, which is hard to do, right? Obviously throwing some carbon fiber on something very old school will give you that. I think it has a lot to do with these like sharp edges and this titanium. Not sharp in a bad way, but they're just not chamfered, and I kind of like that. They feel very tough and rugged, and I like it a lot. This definitely feels like something that my grandpa would have carried. And again, I said that this Esnyx workhorse would probably be in contention for one of my favorite modern traditional front flippers. The Gunslinger Jack is the other in the toss-up, and the Pena Texas Trapper is right there as well. I like this bigger size in a modern traditional, especially if it's going to be a locking blade. And all three of these, it's a toss-up between these three as to which is my favorite modern traditional front flipper. But Jack Wolf is definitely doing some really cool stuff. I feel like if you're looking for something that is non-locking, so maybe that's a legal reason or just a preference. What did we say earlier? The roughest, toughest walk and talk of a slip joint out there right now. I think it goes to Jack Wolf, at least from what I've handled. So there you go. That is Jack Wolf. Very, very cool on this, what does he say? Modern interpretation of timeless design. I think he nails that. That's a really good way to put it. Jack Wolf is crushing it. Next, I want to talk about one of my favorite American makers that I think is underrated and definitely underappreciated, and that is American Blade Works. He's right here. It's Michael Martin. He's right here in North Carolina, and I believe it's Weaverville. And he's doing this out of essentially like a garage or a shop. And this is really, really good work. This thing feels ridiculously tough and like it's ready to go to work. I wouldn't say this feels like a Hinderer or a Chris Reeve knife, but it feels like a tool in the same way that those feel like tools, if that makes sense. This one especially, I bought this one from someone in the Discord a year or 2 years ago, I think. I've put it through some good use. I've put a new edge on it. This thing is still great. I really, really like it. I wanted to try a titanium frame lock when he came out with those because they were all liner locks before, and I really like this in the micarta, but I wanted one in Magna Cut. And in theory, what I did is I bought it so that I could blade swap the Magna Cut onto the micarta. Didn't work, but this is also really good. Now this one is way more stiff, and I've worked on it. I've tweaked the lock bar a little bit here and there. This one is way more stiff than the liner lock. I prefer the liner lock, but the jump or the progress between this one, which I don't know what version this was. So this is the Model 1, ABW Model 1, which is, they're all like this, and then there's a Wharncliffe one, I believe. But this is like a version 3, maybe, and this is a version 6. The difference in the construction and how they're put together and everything is night and day. This one is kind of a pain to take apart. There's like an order of operations and how it has to go together, and if you don't do it just right, you're gonna get almost done and then have to take the whole thing back apart. So he's made massive improvements. And this right here, this is the new Model 2. It's kind of a modified Wharncliffe, I guess, not quite sheepsfoot. Sheepsfoot normally has a slight curve to the blade. Wharncliffe has a straight blade, but it typically is just a straight rounded back. This is kind of somewhere in between. So we'll say modified Wharncliffe or modified sheepsfoot. Another liner lock, titanium handles, great action, Magna Cut blade. So you're getting all of this in an American made knife for $329. I think this is really, really solid for the money. I've got no complaints out of mine whatsoever, and highly recommend ABW. I really still like this one the most though, my original. It's just near and dear, right? I just wish it were Magna Cut, but I'm not gonna complain about S35. Anyway, moving on, that's ABW. You should definitely check them out. I don't think typically when you hear the words Urban EDC Supply, you think knife company, because they typically do drops every Wednesday and feature all sorts of stuff on the website for sale, some really high-end, cool pocket art, all sorts of stuff. But they've collaborated on a lot of knives. They have a lot of in-house exclusive designs now with some very reputable makers. And because of that, I think that they are, or should now be, considered a knife maker, right? They have several designs that are exclusive to Urban EDC Supply that are actually really, really good. So this one, for example, is the Micro Shrike. It's a really, really clean design, very nice looking knife. And this one comes from Jared Price. I personally didn't know of Jared Price before the Micro Shrike, and now I want to continue to follow what he does because this is a really, really clean design. This knife has some like small Sabenza vibes, especially in the blade, but the handle just feels good. Fits well in the hand. It's a good size. It's small, but it fits, and it doesn't feel too small when you're holding it. So yeah, that's kind of what you want in an EDC knife, or at least me. A lot of people, they want something that's small, utilitarian, gets the job done. But yeah, they've made these knives over the last few years. I'm sure there's probably some more, and there's definitely more coming. It's a good time to plug this one right here. So this is the Urban EDC LC, designed by Trevor Berger. I really like Trevor Berger's work as well, and I like this design so well that I have decided to work with them on my own version of this knife. So it'll be basically a three-way collaboration between Trevor, Urban, and myself. We're doing this in a special micarta, like, I don't know, maybe butterscotch?
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know when that'll happen, but they are, I think, currently being made. So let's just name these really quickly. We're not going to go too in depth. I've actually talked about this one a few times on the channel. This is the Baby Barlow from Justin Lundquist. This one is the Monaco from Jens Anso. Love those wave patterns, the milling and the scales, or maybe it's lasering. I don't know, but it's a really cool pattern. This is from his good buddy Jesper Voxnes. This is the Baby Nessie. We already talked about the Micro Strike from Jared Price, the Trevor Berger LC, or the Urban EDC LC. And this one, also designed by Jesper Voxnes, is the F5.5. And then our good buddy over at Everyday Minimalist has designed this knife in collaboration with Urban EDC Supply. And this one is called the Urban Minimalist. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's a pretty minimal design. It's a pretty big knife, and it's pretty sweet. Most of these are in stock over at Urban EDC Supply right now, or on pre-order. I know both of these are currently on pre-order right now, and during the pre-order, their prices are cut. They're slashed for the pre-order. Really cool stuff from Urban EDC Supply. I think they should now be considered a knife maker. They've made some really cool models with really cool makers, so there you go, Urban EDC Supply. So here are the 5 knife brands you should know. We have Null Knives with this ultra modern, sleek aesthetic. It's got really cool, tiny details that just kind of pop. You also have Esnyx, who's got the silver line, really cool production, modern traditionals with things like bottle openers in the handle. It's really neat. You also have Jack Wolf Knives, who is that modern interpretation of timeless design. He's doing really high-end, also kind of hard use slip joints. You also have ABW, or American Blade Works, who is providing what I think is one of the best values for a high-end American-made folder from like a smaller company, right? It's a dude in a garage making some really cool stuff. And then we also have Urban EDC Supply, who's doing awesome collaborations with really well-renowned and some lesser-known, underappreciated designers that deserve that platform. Just a little bit of something different from each of these that I think is worth checking out. So the next time you're looking for a knife, be sure to check out these guys and see what they've got coming up. I've also done several other videos where I talk about some knife makers that are on the up and up, or that I think are maybe a little bit underappreciated. So go check those out as well. And if you'd ever buy from any of these, let them know I sent you. I don't have affiliates with most of them. I do with Urban EDC Supply, but I don't with any of the others. And I couldn't tell you from the other videos, but it's just really cool to see the community support and uplift smaller and up-and-coming makers. It's really awesome. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you found it helpful. If you did, let me know in the comments down below. And until next time, carry on.